Welcome back. Welcome back. All right. So, during our marriage crisis years ago, suddenly my concerns were being received as jealousy, obsession, and insecurity. I kept trying to explain that she had misunderstood me, but every explanation sounded needier and made me less attractive. And we've also worked with ambitious women on our program, our coaching program, who supported a man's career and supported their plans repeatedly, only to watch promises replace progress until they felt more like a parent than a lover. So the solution cannot be women should suppress their potential and keep assuring him. The sustainable question that we need to be asking is this: when money can no longer guarantee your significance, which is a basic human need, when money can no longer guarantee significance, so what do you do at this point in time, right? Do you do you know how to create value, right? Do you know how to create value in a romantic relationship long term, such as a marriage? Do you know how to do that? Um, this is where people struggle, guys. All right. So today we're talking about your marriage is in danger when you start making more money. Right. It's an interesting question. Now, over the past several years, it's been a trendy topic. But we don't talk about trends here now. I'm talking about evergreen stuff that you're going to find useful in your relationship. So we need to dive in deeper into the pattern of what's happening. So, like many men, right? When I would ask for advice, when I was, like I said, in crisis with my marriage years ago, when I would ask for advice or help or counsel, I secretly wanted this seemingly manipulative path, which is essentially a bad cycle where they would help me tell my partner that she's wrong, okay, that she should probably bend to a certain set of rules. And today I'm going to talk about insecurity. The path I'm going to follow today is going to, first of all, we're talking about money, right? You make more money, right? You make more money, and suddenly marriage is in danger, right? Marriage danger. Particularly in this respect, we're talking about women, right? Women. Okay, so let's not pretend. Usually, this is applicable. So, if a woman is making more money, then a lot of people assume that this is going to translate to money danger, But anything that's viral or trendy or people have lots of opinion about, there are elements of truth to it, right? And that's what I want to discuss today. So everything we're going to discuss today is going to be triggered by one simple inevitable, right? We're going to call it insecurity. All right, insecurity. So this conversation today is going to be triggered by insecurity. And yes, I call it inevitable. It is not a crime, it's something that happens to all of us at some point in time. And many people would like to pretend that that is not a real thing. I hate to burst all of our bubbles. It is, all right? It is a real thing, and you're going to see more and more of it out there, guys, and it's going to get worse the more we're in denial about it. All right, so but before we dive deep into today's breakdown, if your marriage is actively in a crisis, in a state of crisis, and you cannot afford to wait for these daily live streams to figure out piece by piece, go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery right now and book a one-on-one discovery session with me so we can map out your exact strategy privately to get out of the funk. All right, so welcome back. Like I was saying, today we're talking about your marriage is in danger when you start making more money. Particularly, this is usually said to women. Is it true? Is it false? Is there some element of truth to that? Excuse me, sorry. Is there some element of truth to this? Of course, there's always element of truth to it, all right? But is it outrightly true? We have a lot of advisors out there. Some of them are authorities in these conversations, and they would tell you straight up that this is true, yes, and they will claim they're telling you the truth. But is it really that simple? No, it is not that simple. And oftentimes, when we don't really break these things down, we create terrible solutions from might I call it myopic place, very surface levels. They will not really dive in deeper to what the underlying patterns are, so we can actually solve for it. Most people just create so yes. So when you say yes, it's true, right? What do you come up with? Say yes, women should not make more money, right? Or they should suppress themselves, or they should overwork themselves to make you feel better. As a man, is that really sustainable? That's the question we need to be asking. And oftentimes, if you're in a very bad place as a woman, where you're still actively trying to save the marriage, you might actually attempt non-sustainable strategies that will only build even more resentment. And that's why I want to talk about this today. So let me draw out this path. Insecurity, typically for an average marriage, will lead to control. All right. And what does this lead into? I'm going to draw it out first and then I'll explain, okay? This leads to suppression, like I was just saying, right? Suppression, like let's try something. It makes sense, you know. Some women are just rude. So let's just try to tame, I get it. It's coming from a good place, but how long is that going to last? What does suppression lead to? Suppression leads to reassurance, right? Again, continuous attempt to see if you can salvage the situation, right? Reassurance, right? There's nothing wrong with reassurance on the surface, right? But the question is this sustainable as usual? Reassurance leads to passivity. I'm going to explain what that means to you guys. Okay? Passivity. This is a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes that people don't pay attention to. And passivity leads to resentment. As you should probably remember right now, I jumped way too ahead earlier on, right? So before you get to resentment, what we find is that it will go through suppression, reassurance, before we get to it's all a process, right? And sometimes this process is years, sometimes a few seconds, right? Yeah, so these are the issues. So we have let me make this bigger. So we have this guy will lead to resentment. All right. So obviously it takes time. Well, maybe not so obvious, but it takes time to get into that place, and then eventually leads into one of the 4 predictors of divorce, right? One of the 4 predictors of divorce is contempt. I'm going to explain that in a little bit more detail. All right, so this is what we have, guys. This is what a lot of people are going through. Yeah, it leads to contempt, but the goal is not to get to contempt, right? Insecurities are inevitable, right? Really, the goal, what I really want to share with you is how to flip insecurity into influence. All right, what I want to help you with today is how to flip this into influence. All right, and obviously positive influence to get more of what you're looking for, but we're going to come back to this later on. Okay, but for now, let's break down why is it that this situation just gets worse and worse for most people, right? Why? So insecurity is inevitable, as I was explaining earlier on. As a natural, I'm not going to tell you that people are not going to be insecure, because that would be an outright lie. And I'm not going to tell you that you could just perform your way out of your husband feeling insecure, or your wife can perform her way out of you suddenly no longer feeling insecure. What do I mean by insecurity? before I get into that, there are two paths that we can take with this situation, right? Triggered, right? Triggered into insecurity. Yeah, it's not your fault, whatever you want to call it. You're right, okay? But there are two paths, right? But basically, the thought that goes through the mind of a man in this space is she doesn't respect me anymore, right? She doesn't respect me anymore. Yeah? And why? Right? Because she earned more money. She got a promotion. She's now feeling big. Westernization. This woman. Again, there are elements of truth. Are they absolute? They're never absolute. Okay? And if you conclude that it's because she's making more money, you're going to create terrible solutions. That's why we must work on that. Your interpretations, you're responsible. You have the power to attach interpretations to the event of life. And those interpretations will determine how you process whatever is going on in life, which happens to all of us, right? Okay. So we're talking about who is explaining, right? Who's complaining, rather, right? Who's complaining? Is it the man complaining? Is it the woman complaining? So we have two different parts on the solution I want to offer you today. All right. But the worst case scenario is usually what happens, right? So we have a situation of insecurity. What does insecurity mean? Her success triggers a painful interpretation. Triggers a painful interpretation, right? She does not need me anymore. She thinks she's better than me. Thoughts, right? Your mind start to play tricks on you. I'm losing my position as a man in my household. These are the thoughts. Okay? These are the thoughts of insecurity that it might be hard to just admit that it's insecurity, but it's reality. I'm losing my position, right? The emotion itself, reality is that it's human, okay? And that's normal human. Nobody feels high all the time, like they figure life out all the time. It's just not real, right? But there's a danger when you just operate from your place of feelings, and it's actually worse when you're in denial about it, right? The danger begins when you start making her responsible to eliminate it, right? And that's what often happens, and that's what's trendy out there. It's just like, women should just make sure they play their role. When you say things like that, it sounds good on the surface, but I'm not sure anybody is sitting down somewhere and deciding they won't play their role. Now, some people are stubborn, right? So the stubbornness is the real issue, not that they decided to just be evil. For the people that we are concerned about, okay? We're not talking about bad people. We're talking about normal, good people that actually want to do the right thing. So what do we have next? We have control, right? Control. So the person complaining in this situation now is the man, right? But maybe the woman is trying to solve for it. So in control, what we're talking about is that attraction is at play, either you like it or not, okay? It's always present, right? People will naturally they are more openness. They're open to doing what you like when they feel attracted to you. I'm using big words. When they like you, okay? When they simply like you, they want to do what makes you happy naturally, right? But that's usually also a function of they are happy to a large extent, right? So, but they're not doing that. So what do, right? You try to manage that source of discomfort. The discomfort of insecurity. I feel less than, okay, no, I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say she thinks she's better than me, right? Because she's making more money, right? So you would try to manage that source of discomfort, right? By things like you start criticizing her schedule. Maybe she should be home at 3:30 because a woman is supposed to be at home to take care of the kids by 3:30, right? Even if it's one day a week, right? There's no room for grace because you have a lot of emotions operating with you. She might even advise herself that, right? But again, there's a little bit of seeds of resentment that are being sown. So the point here is that whatever you choose, solution you choose to go by must be grounded in long term. Like, is this sustainable long term, considering everything else, right? So you might try to criticize her schedule, you criticize her friends, right? The man start criticizing her side of the family, or just continue to show even more contempt, right? questions her priorities, restrict her opportunities, right? That's what we're talking about here. You might even start using religious reasons, like things like kingdom methods, right? You label it whatever you want to make yourself feel better. And you start using those things to really, again, to manage the discomfort of feeling less than a man, right? And by the way, we have a major crisis in the church because no one is really telling the truth. Well, I'm not sure if they're capable of telling the truth, to be honest. You must start using cultural and marital titles as reasons to protect your position, right? Or you as a woman trying to protect his position, because many cases with our clients, you can hear them actually trying to protect their husband's ego. And again, the question is this sustainable long term, right? So the objective becomes making her smaller enough for him to feel bigger. I know I'm painting the picture here, right? Is it making sense? And then that leads into suppression. Hello, Fedos. That leads into suppression. So let's talk about suppression. What is suppression looking like, guys? It's gonna get worse, right? So she begins to suppress her honest feelings, right? How do you separate? And it's confusing because how do you separate your honest feelings from, I should just do the right thing. Let me just play my role. Let me just be a good wife. It can be very difficult to separate the two, right? So she starts suppressing her feelings, but it doesn't stop there. She starts suppressing the opportunities that might come to her, which is opportunities for the family, only if you can see it that way. She might start to suppress her ambitions, which is again opportunities for the family, only if a man can see it that way, right? And she will start to avoid she doesn't want the conflict, right? She doesn't want to have to deal with talking bad about her friends or anything like that, right? Or her job, or she ideally she would like to come home and be able to tell you all the, because no person's job place or workplace is always good. They want to tell you about the gossipy things, but they can't tell you because they feel like it might come with a judgment or of not taking up the opportunities, right? So she may soften every achievement that she's achieving at work. She might hide her excitement, refuse opportunities, avoid discussing money because it's a soft spot, right? She doesn't want to discuss how much money she's making because she can feel it. She can feel the tension in the room whenever that comes up, right? And maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's just a mild version of it. Mild version, big version. Who is determining what's big or soft? You just never know when it's enough. When the threshold is big enough to destroy a marriage. So she starts even performing a certain level of admiration. Because men basic need admiration, loyalty, and sometimes we'll say peace, right? Admiration, loyalty, and respect, right? So performative admiration is, again, to some extent, that can only last for so long, right? But does she really genuinely feel that, and if she does, how long can she keep it up if it's performative, right? Because again, we all put our best foot forward sometimes just to make life better for everyone. But is this sustainable, right? Is that cycle being fed properly to make it sustainable? And that becomes a question. So the household becomes quieter whenever money is involved or her career is involved. But the problem is that attraction, right? Is she liking you more or less by the day? That becomes a big issue to really pay attention to. So now she gets into the mode of reassurance because again, she's still trying, right? She's still trying because again, this is a marriage, right? Contrary to popular belief where women are just leaving marriage anyhow, well, it's a process. Those process sometimes will take years before it becomes reality. Is it the man's fault? No, I'm trying to get you to understand the breakdown right now. So let's talk about reassurance, right? So she repeatedly tries to convince him, you're still the man. Does she mean that? Why does she feel the need to say that? If you're the man, why does she feel the need to tell you you're still the man? Anyway, I still need you. Wait, that should be obvious. Okay. But yeah, I still need you. That's reaffirming, reassuring, just trying to help him to maybe to gain some kind of confidence. There's nothing wrong with all this stuff on the surface. It's good, right? She might even say, your income does not matter. I love you for you. I love you for your heart. But reassurance has a short emotional half-life. Okay? Based on other factors I don't want to discuss right now, especially coming from a woman, reassurance has short emotional half-life. Because again, there's nothing wrong with saying those kind of things to your husband. I think it's beautiful, right? But is it sustainable if that's the only thing feeding his ego? When confidence must continually arrive from your spouse, from any side, to be frank with you, the spouse eventually becomes responsible for regulating the other person's identity. Can you really keep that up? Let's get into passivity. I did promise I was going to explain passivity. Passivity, in this respect, listen, it's the idea that you have to continue to protect the position. Even it could be a man that say, I'm the man of this house. Like, there's nobody feeling happy in their marriage who feels the need to say that. There's nobody in a happy space in their marriage who feel respected, who feels like they're confident, who feel like their sense of real self would feel the need to say, I'm the man. I'm the man usually comes from a place of, I need to reaffirm my position. Something terribly bad is going on. Like what? Like maybe insecurity? Insecurity is not a crime. It's just a moment where you feel like you have to reaffirm your position. But what I'm saying is that if you keep that up, okay, it is not good, right? This is a man who has less psychological pressure to develop new sources of value. A man who does not feel empowered, right, to actually flow from a place of abundance into his family. That's not a good thing, right? That's what we mean by passivity. He may, for lack of a better word, maybe stagnant in purpose, in confidence, emotional intelligence, right? Which is easier said than done. It's not just some phrase we throw around just because it feels good. It's easier said than done. It's a man who does not have the capacity to seduce, to contribute. He begins receiving respect on credit. Respect dashed credit, right? Like credit, without nothing else flowing from an intrinsic place, right? Rather than generating respect through perceived value. It's a lot that I just said right there. Perceived value, perception is everything, guys. Okay. Again, when you are receiving credit on, receiving respect on credit, you can only go so far with that. Like anything else, you're going to breed resentment. Yeah, it's only going to get worse from that point. If nothing breaks this cycle, it's only going to get worse and worse. Yeah. So John says, is it the result same if the woman starts making more money? No, it is not, because our society does not treat the genders equally. Okay? Not when it comes to romance, at least. We would like to think it's equal, and there's continuous work on that from an activism standpoint in terms of feminism and stuff like that. And that's not the context of this conversation. We're talking about in marriage now. And in marriage, no, it is not the same. If a woman generates more money or woman or man, is different, right? But the pattern tends to be the same when we bring it down from just money to insecurity. The pattern is insecurity. If you have to continue to feed somebody's confidence from the other side, temporarily, yes. If you have, it's not sustainable long term. That's the point, and that's what people will mean sometimes when they say it is not the job of your partner to make you feel happy. It's not that moment to moment you can't do that. It's the question is it sustainable, or you're going to eventually build resentment, right? So in this case, we're using money as an example, right? So with resentment, she begins resenting the cost of protecting his confidence, right? She starts thinking she's carrying more while she's still shrinking. She has to shrink more while she has to carry more, right? Again, still managing his feelings. That's not sustainable. He resents the fact because he's also harboring resentment, right? So they're feeding each other, they're both feeding the cycle. Both people have to feed the cycle for that cycle to be sustainable until it busts open into what we don't like, right? Like divorce, right? So he's also resenting the fact that our assurance never feels convincing enough because he can tell that it's fake, it's performative, right? So both people, they feel cheated. Both people. So there you go. That's a both right there. They both feel cheated because it's almost never good enough. And that's what leads to contempt. It's me against you, as opposed to me and you against the world. Right? Eventually, suppressed truth returns as sarcasm. That's a poison. Correction. Correction is not bad on the surface, right? But what do you mean by correction, right? Constant correction, eye rolling, criticism is what we're talking about. One of the predictors of divorce. When you sustain it long enough, if it feels like criticism as opposed to, we're trying to build something together, then, you have sexual rejection because nobody, if they don't like you, they don't want to have sex with you, right? That should be obvious, right? Impatience, emotional detachment, right? Okay, so now he start to think, you see, successful women become disrespectful. This is his interpretation. That's where he concludes at. Hastily, oftentimes, right? He will conclude that successful women, they're disrespectful, they can't be in a marriage, right? And that's going to show in his behavior because he resents the whole thing, right? And, as you can see, contempt did not begin with her paycheck. No. It grew inside a structure where artificial respect was demanded while sustainable attraction was never developed. And that's why I call this particular loop right here, this cycle, that's why we're calling it the artificial respect cycle. All right, let me put that here so we can have that. The artificial, because you have to kind of like manufacture this over and over, and it's just not good. Not good enough. Never will be good enough. All right. We call it dash respect. Not good. Uh-oh. That's why we call it the artificial respect cycle, guys. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So contempt is one of the 4 predictors of divorce, and of course contempt continues to feed this crazy ass cycle, potentially ending in divorce because something has to give way at some point if you keep producing that cycle, right? So anyway, hey Auntie X, hello. Your marriage is in danger when you start making more money. That's usually said to women, okay? But it's just as dangerous for both sides, right? For the marriage, it's just as dangerous. The mindset is what's dangerous. It's not the half truth inside of the topic, because it's half a truth. Because you don't really no people that are talking about this, they don't go this deep into what is like. It starts from insecurity, and insecurity following this path, which it doesn't have to follow this path, will make this statement true. Whereas you could have taken a different path, and that's what we're talking about. Hit the like button. Feel free to say hello in the chat. Hello everybody. All right, feel free to say hello in the chat. So look, what I'm teaching you right now is a universal roadmap, but every marriage has its own unique hidden landmines. And if you want me to look directly at your specific relationship, the blocks in your relation, because everybody is different again, and you want to go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. The link is also pinned into the description box below, and secure one of the discovery slots available this week. So some of you are realizing for the first time that this is not about money. Okay, this is money is not the actual issue here, right? So you creating a solution from thinking it's just about money and women, you're going to self-sabotage. That's what because it's going to the insecurity behavior will show up in other aspects of life. right? And now it's not going to be about money, but you didn't see it coming because you thought it was about money all along. The issue is identifying which pattern is destroying your marriage. And this exactly why we created the discovery session. You can go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. So yes, we're talking about money, women, and marriage. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel because we're bringing this from time to time and share it with somebody that cares about this kind of conversations. All right. So now let's get into what I call this is what I call the irreplaceable value cycle. Okay, we're going to replace this crazy ass cycle with the irreplaceable value cycle. The irreplaceable, the prestige irreplaceable value cycle. Let's correct this guy. Can we fix this? Irreplaceable. Okay, I guess. All right, and guess what? It's triggered by the same issue, right? Yeah, because listen, this is real life. Insecurity is not, it's a bastard, but it's there. But it is what it is, right? But the reality is that, the good news is that you can take a different path, okay, from insecurity, right? Just being here today, right now, when insecurity creeps up, when you start to feel like, well, she thinks she's better than me, that's insecurity, okay? That's insecurity. Could that be a true statement? But your interpretation in terms of the event that made you say that, you can give it a different interpretation, right? And that interpretation is not going to fall out of the sky. You're not born with it, right? So you're going to need awareness, all right? A lot of that is self-awareness, okay? So, and that's the good news about what we're covering here today, right? From awareness will lead into purpose. I'm going to take the time to explain it, right? All right. So from awareness, now everything you do from this point is backed by purpose. When I say purpose, pain-driven purpose, because if you don't have a certain level of experience, you're not necessarily able to interpret these events properly, right? So often those experiences are painful. Because most people that haven't gone through pain, they will give opinions. Those opinions are like the asshole. They're useless for the most part. I'm sorry. All right. Purpose leads to presence. Okay. Now you are actually operating from a place of presence. Okay. Presence. All right. And presence leads to the beautiful aspect of everything I'm sharing with you right now. But you're not going to end up here if you are playing a victim. If you're a victim, that happens in life. But if you're playing a victim, that's a different ballgame entirely, right? So this presence leads to your ability to seduction, right? Your ability to seduce leads to attraction, right? So now we're getting closer to, right? We're getting closer to what you may call it. We're getting closer to influence, right? Because when you have influence, you do have influence, but when you have influence that you are aware of, you are able to use that to create the results you're looking for. You also understand that that's a process, right? Now we're getting closer to attraction. Hold on 1 second, guys. Yeah, let's just connect that to influence, okay? And again, the prestige irreplaceable value cycle starts with insecurity, but it's about your interpretation to life events. You do have that power, but it's not going to happen without awareness. So all of this happens now. The influence that you have, that creates evidence, right? That you actually have power, and you can actually, but you understand it's a process, right? But the beautiful thing about that is that becomes even more confidence, and then that feeds the loop over and over again. And this by itself, because it has intrinsic value in it, it's sustainable. Okay, so I'm going to put this as it's going to keep feeding awareness. All right, it's going to keep feeding awareness. All right, so again, you're a human being. Sometimes, man or woman, sometimes insecurity will come in, right? The reality is that her success can absolutely trigger a very human feeling, right? Now, it's a little bit different, right? It's a little bit different because now you're saying, what if she no longer needs me? The question is still insecurity, but it's different, right? It's different from she thinks she's better than me. See, same truth, different interpretation, right? What if I am becoming irrelevant? You're just being a human being, right? It's a subconscious thought, right? Whatever is going on in your life, maybe you had a tough time, maybe you've applied for jobs for the last 18 months and you're being offered, and you even start to relate it back to the village. Maybe the village people are after you, right? But then you see your wife succeeding, but she's carrying a lot of weight. And when she's at her lowest moment, you're starting to have this interpretation, very human interpretation. What if she sees me as less of a man, right? Again, this can show up in different forms. Insecurity itself is not the failure. Okay, everybody experiences insecurity. That's the reality at different moments in life events and stuff like that. The failure begins when insecurity is converted into control, like we described earlier, right? Resentment, withdrawal, right? Demands that she becomes smaller to fit into whatever it is that you're cooking, right? And is that sustainable? Right? So in this sustainable cycle, insecurity becomes information, right? Not instruction. You don't just convert that into you must be this. And it gets worse because people will justify it with religious shenanigans, right? The nonsense, like with moral based, cultural, you just play your role, A woman should not, all this kind of stuff that in our society is not going to fly because you can't keep trying to make someone smaller than what they actually are. That's going to backfire really badly, right? So, but let's talk about awareness. Let's talk about what this awareness of a thing, what it actually means. Awareness means the man notices the story beneath the feeling, right? Whatever it is, like is the ability, is the first step in emotional intelligence. Is the ability to say, why do I feel the way I feel? So you're acknowledging that I have a certain feeling, positive or negative, but you're able to dig in deeper beyond that. Before you act, before you give instructions around that, before you paint everybody else's faces as they're bad or evil, they're able to say, why do I feel the way I feel, right? As opposed to, oh, she has become disrespectful. Like, you're able to say, that feels disrespectful. Feeling disrespectful. And then you ask, what exactly is her success? Right? Okay, we jumped to success real too soon, but wait, why did I jump to success, to her success so soon? And why is that success triggering me? What is that success triggering inside of me? This is a question that you cannot answer while you're in the middle of an argument with your wife. This is a question that you only can answer properly in a space of solitude by yourself. You're spending quality time with yourself, right? You have the ability, the capacity to do that. You're going to places. There's nothing in the streets for your wife. She will never find anything as good as you in the streets. It's damn near impossible because most people operate, yes, men, even men, especially men, in this time and age operate from their place of feelings, and they will justify the BS with logic. Okay. You're asking what exactly about her success is triggering me as a man. Have I connected my entire life to provision? What kind of question is that? You can't, people don't fall out of the skies asking those questions to themselves. Of course, my identity is provision. I'm a man, I provide, I protect. Well, if all of your identity is that, it will start to make sense why insecurity takes the wrong path, right? Because insecurity is going to be there. But when you take the wrong path, you're going to conclude that successful women are just terrible for marriage. And you will be right. But you will also rightfully destroy yeah. We're still live. I got too excited. I clicked the wrong button and we ended up on the outside of the room. Okay, hopefully we're still live. I think we're live. You see. Yeah, we're live, guys. Sorry about that. Hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications. We're going somewhere. We're going somewhere. All right, let's see. Oh, okay. We're doing well. So, yeah, I got too excited. Ended up on the outside of the room. You understand? So now, it gets worse, right? It just gets worse, right? So if you've connected all of your identity as a human being to your ability to provide and protect, and so when there's momentary moments where you couldn't do that, you don't feel like yourself, you don't feel significant. But being able to sit with yourself and ask enough questions to get to this space this is what we call awareness. Awareness creates a pause between the feeling and the reaction. Okay, so that pause protects your marriage, right? You will still be right, and you can still, like I was saying, you can rightfully destroy your marriage.
Well, you're right.
All right, so awareness, I'll create that pause so we can actually get to purpose. What do I mean by purpose? Purpose gives you an identity, right? It gives you an identity that does not rise and fall on your ability to create income, right? It gives you because if all you do is just think about income or your protection, then you're forced into a place of comparison, and comparison is a thief of joy, right? And you're able to reconnect from where you are. There's intrinsic value. It's not based on external stuff. You're not seeking external validation to determine your value, right? To determine your standards, right? To determine your mission in this life. There's no one moment that determines your mission in this life. Regardless, you're on a journey, right? You have that discipline even when it doesn't feel right. You're committed to your life mission, your life purpose, that even moments where it feels slow is just an opportunity to double down, right? That takes discipline, right? And it doesn't take any discipline to operate from your place of your feelings, right? Because feelings is effortless. It comes, right? But what do you do with that, right? So your wife's progress no longer has any meaning. At least it doesn't mean failure for you, right? And when you think that way, you don't operate from a place of your wife. So why are you carrying all of that weight? Because it's your feelings. Even if your partner is going to help you, right? You have to come from the internal structures has to be right. Because there's nothing wrong with your wife helping you with your ego in these times, but it's not sustainable to try to suppress a woman into a place of, that she has to be smaller than you to feel bigger. That's crazy. That sounds terrible, right? So it's not right. As a man, he may still feel uncomfortable, right? Yes, that's real life. But as a man, you no longer just don't have a sense of direction. You're just going with your feelings. But as a man, you're logical, right? That's what you've been telling yourself. But that's not reality, which is why you're creating terrible solutions. You need to still acknowledge that you're a human being, you have feelings, and insecurity can creep in, especially in bad times. But you're not trying to fix that discomfort by controlling what you think is the source of the discomfort, which is the fact that she's making more money, right? So purpose transforms insecurity into movement, right? So now let's talk about presence. Let's go a little bit deeper on presence. You're present. You're present. Being present is easier said than done. Oftentimes we're thinking about the worst case scenario, everything outside of the present, right? What if it's because the past? What if obsession with the past and the future? Obsession, there's nothing wrong with planning for the future, but planning for the future is different from being obsessed with the future or the past. Purpose allows you as a man to become present instead of defensive. Defensiveness is one of the 4 predictors of divorce. You have contempt, defensiveness, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, stonewalling, right? So you can hear her frustration because she's human too, right? So even though she's making all this money, she's not necessarily feeling good because a lot of women want to be able to look up to you, but they can still look up to you even if money is a temporary situation. Again, I've been painting this like this only has to be temporary. I'm saying indefinitely she might be on a career path where she actually makes more money, and that's just what that's going to be. That should not become your identity, because she still wants to be able to look up to you, but she probably resent the idea that you think your identity is money too, but you can't help yourself because you've gotten this idea that money should be your identity from whatever, maybe from the past. But we're no longer in the past. I was talking about the past, being present, right? So you can listen without immediately correcting or reacting or controlling, which is not necessarily a decision to control. So, no, I'm not controlling. Slow down. You're being defensive again. You don't decide to be controlling. Your behavior is what we're looking at. It's what the other person is perceiving as controlling. So you have to you have to calm down to actually be able to determine if that's a real thing or not. And perception is everything. What do you mean perception? That's not real. I'm telling you that if you want to rise above in this life, it is not about what you think, it's about the reality. Perception is everything in real life. Nothing matters outside of that. It's what people see, it's their point of view. Perception, right there. Logical, if you want to be logical, right? So you can remain emotionally steady, even in the midst of all of this, while she, yes, expresses strength, assert certain things, ideas, intimidation by assertive women. That's still coming from inside. That's internal structure. That's battles. That's internal battles, rather. Okay, and you can remain emotionally steady when she's ambitious, right? When she expresses strength or disappointment in certain behaviors, you're a rock. You're supposed to be the rock in the family. You're not shaking off your purpose. So presence communicates that you can experience your power without losing yourself. No, let me fix that. You can actually experience her power without losing yourself. That's what presence will communicate. And that emotional steadiness is sexy. There's nothing in the streets when you find yourself in this manner. Okay? And seduction, of course. So now you begin creating value that is not dependent on financial leverage. Right? You can create that. You can be more playful. You can be more decisive. You can be more sexually present without attaching, like, you don't need to be a certain whatever, like this predetermined nonsense, right? And then that leads to attraction. Attraction becomes more possible when you are present, when you have the ability to seduce outside of money, and then that leads to influence, because attraction creates influence. Its words will begin to be more to have like a more emotional weight, as opposed, like, your words is If you can talk, then if you can talk, especially talk nastiness, that means you can use your words to build. It's just a matter of a decision. It's a choice that you have to make. And the goal is not to eliminate insecurity forever, because that is unrealistic. Okay. The goal is to become emotionally intelligent enough to recognize insecurity because it becomes control. All right. So before I wrap up today, let me just make sure. What are we doing here, guys? Hit the like button, share, subscribe, turn up your notifications, guys. Before we wrap up, let me leave you with this. If during today's lesson you find yourself thinking that I'm talking about your marriage, maybe this is your, because again, everything I'm saying is easier said than done, because insecurity is a bastard. It is what it is. But it's about the capacity to take the right path after when it happens, either as a man or a woman. You might be a woman who feels like you've given it all, but he just is always trying to suppress. Same thing goes for you. You're in that marriage, so this is something you care about, right? Or you're a man and you feel like, yes, this is a real thing for me. I would like, maybe want to create more income. You cannot create more income if you're taking the wrong path from a place of insecurity, right? If you're always looking at your wife and you're feeling less than and you're actively trying to suppress her, you're not going to create more income either, because again, you're operating from a place of of being a defeatist, right? You feel less than, so that nobody, like, you're not going to do well from that point. If you think I'm talking about your marriage, every marriage is still very much different, okay? And that's why I offer the discovery session, which you can book. You can book a private discovery session by simply going to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. What I'll do is I'll spend 1 hour with you looking at your specific situation, identify how you can navigate out of this. I gave you a universal roadmap, but we'll give you something specific, custom for you, so you can gain clarity on the next best step. And that's getmymarriageback.com/discovery. So what I'm trying to tell you here is very simple. You see, this path right here is the path of doom. This idea that you're going to suppress a woman so you can feel bigger, it's not sustainable. It's just, you're not gonna pull it off. It's not gonna happen. It's impossible. Not in this time and age. Okay, it's not gonna happen. And even worse is that you're shooting yourself on the legs. That's the worst part about this whole thing. It's only going to get worse from that place. If you go from insecurity to control, right? Either you're aware of it or not. As long as it's control, as perceived as control on the other side, you're self-sabotaging. You don't have to agree that it's control. It just has to be perceived as control, and that's all it is. That's all it needs to carry weight and value. Again, the goal is not to eliminate insecurity. The goal is to become emotionally intelligent enough to recognize insecurity before it becomes control. Do you understand? In that destructive cycle, insecurity becomes control, and in the sustainable cycle, insecurity actually becomes awareness, and awareness becomes purpose. Purpose becomes presence. Presence becomes seduction. Okay, influence. We're talking about influence now. We're talking about attraction, right? We're talking about knowing exactly what to do just in case you find yourself in a place of funk ever again. You're able to use your influence to even create more awareness and then build something that's sustainable long term, because it has intrinsic value, not money, not value attached to money. Some people would even justify and say, be deceiving yourself, right? In this life, the only thing that matters to a man is money. Just repeat that to yourself in front of a mirror and see what it sounds like. Just try that, okay? The destructive man treats insecurity as permission to control her, okay? And the worst part about that is it's a subconscious thing. I'm not expecting that you will admit that you sat down somewhere and you decide you're going to control her. I'm expecting that you will feel happy when you see a preacher preaching that a woman should help you feel better. You start feeling a hard-on because they help you, told your woman to help you feel better. How sustainable is that? That's not going to last. Okay? The attractive man treats insecurity as an invitation to develop himself. And that can also be money can be a part of that. You might want to develop your income, but you also know that you're not going to develop your income unless you develop the value that you bring into the marketplace. That's the only way to develop your income anyway. So why would you take the path of doom, right? The idea of trying to control other people, not even the corporate world, is not going to happen. I promise you. It's unrealistic. So if today's lesson helped you, I'd appreciate if you like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs it. I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yeah, maybe. But yes, I'm here all the time. I'll definitely see you very, very soon. Go ahead. I have other videos on this platform. Go ahead and start watching and start receiving more value, okay? And if you need help restoring attraction, developing value beyond just money, or inviting your husband or your wife into a marriage saving process, just book your discovery session and just go to getmymarriageback.com/discovery. Hopefully you've been enlightened, educated. We'll see you on the next one. Take care. God bless. Peace.
Are you fighting to save a marriage or a relationship, or simply avoiding to end up in a broken or toxic one?
We've been there and you're in the right place. You see, inside this book, right, you will find and you will discover the secret to save a broken marriage, and you will learn how to build and attract the marriage of your dream.